The massive chamber of the Galactic Council filled with representatives from 12 different species across the known universe. They gathered today for one purpose: to watch humanity fall. The humans had refused to give up their colonies in the Outer Rim territories, and the Council decided to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Commander Zixthor stood tall before the assembled aliens, his four eyes gleaming with absolute confidence as he addressed the crowd. He was a Krellian warrior who had won countless battles across the galaxy, and today would add another victory to his long list of achievements. The human fleet consists of only 40 vessels, he announced through his translator device. Our armada has 300 warships, and each one has been tested in dozens of campaigns across multiple star systems. The other delegates nodded in agreement, already preparing their victory speeches and celebration plans for after the battle ended. Quillix floated near the center of the chamber, his transparent form shimmering as he projected holographic data for everyone to see. He was the Council's top military analyst, and his simulations never failed to predict the outcome of any battle. The data showed clear results that made every delegate smile with satisfaction. Our predictions indicate complete human surrender within 6 to 8 hours at most, Quillix explained in his echoing voice. Their technology remains primitive compared to ours. They still use basic kinetic weapons instead of advanced plasma systems, and their fusion drives are outdated by at least 2 centuries. Ambassador Vorn of the Sisterhood of Tal rose from her seat, her 3 hearts beating with excitement. She had studied human behavior for months and believed she understood their greatest weakness perfectly. Humanity's emotional nature will be their downfall, she declared with certainty. When they see our numbers and realize how outmatched they are, panic will spread through their ranks like wildfire. They will scatter across the system, abandon their formations, and beg us for mercy before the first hour passes. The other delegates applauded her assessment, confident that their overwhelming force would break the human spirit quickly. Meanwhile on Earth, Admiral Jack Morrison sat in his office at Central Command reading the ultimatum that had arrived from the Council. The message was simple and brutal. Surrender all human colonies beyond Mars' orbit immediately, or face total destruction of every human vessel in space. They gave humanity 12 hours to respond to their demands. Jack looked across his desk at Captain Lisa Hayes, his second in command and the person he trusted most in the entire fleet. She stood waiting for orders, her expression calm despite the gravity of their situation. "Get me Admiral Chen on the Beijing and Commander Brown on the New York," Jack said quietly. "It's time we showed these aliens what human engineering actually looks like when we stop holding back." Lisa allowed herself a small smile at those words. "Should I activate the Ghost Protocol, sir?" she asked. "Not yet," Jack replied while studying the tactical display that showed the approaching alien armada. "Let them get close first. Let them feel confident and secure in their overwhelming numbers. Let them think they've already won this battle before it even begins." Back in the council chamber, the delegates settled into their comfortable seats to watch the battle through long-range sensors. They ordered refreshments and made small talk about how they would divide human territories after the victory. None of them paid attention to the strange energy readings that started appearing around the human fleet. Their sensors detected unusual patterns that didn't match any known propulsion system or weapons technology in the entire galactic database. The readings were subtle, barely noticeable unless someone looked very carefully at the data streams. Quillix noticed the anomalies but dismissed them as sensor errors, or perhaps some desperate attempt by humans to mask their true numbers. He had seen such tricks before from other species, and they never worked against Council technology. The Krellian Fleet Master Zixthor prepared his forces for the jump into human space, organizing his 300 warships into a formation that had crushed resistance on 100 worlds. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, led the armada with its massive plasma cannons charged and ready to fire. Every captain in the fleet knew their role perfectly, and every warrior prepared for an easy victory. Jack Morrison walked onto the bridge of the UNS Washington, the flagship of Earth's defense fleet. His crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their assigned tasks. They had trained for this moment for years, running simulations and developing tactics that no alien force had ever encountered before. The ship's artificial intelligence systems hummed with activity, running millions of calculations per second. Lieutenant Commander Greg Palmer sat at the tactical station, monitoring the approaching enemy fleet. Chief Science Officer Dr. Helen Wright analyzed every scrap of data they could gather about Council technology and weapon systems. Commander Sarah Bennett prepared the electronic warfare suite, ready to unleash chaos on alien communication networks. Lieutenant Jake Foster ran final checks on the drone systems, the secret weapon that would shock the entire galaxy. The Washington's crew represented the best humanity had to offer, trained in tactics that drew from every war, every battle, and every conflict in human history. They studied wolf packs and bee swarms, ancient Greek warfare, and modern special operations. They learned from video games and sports teams, from nature documentaries and military history books. Everything humanity had ever learned about coordination and combat had been poured into their training. The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their arrival detected immediately by human sensors. 300 massive warships appeared in perfect formation, their weapons powered up and their shields at maximum strength. It was the largest invasion force ever assembled against a single species in Council history. Zixthor looked at the tactical display showing 40 small human vessels waiting in the distance. He laughed at the sight, unable to believe the humans actually intended to fight rather than surrender. His tactical officer Vex began scanning the human ships, searching for any hidden weapons or reinforcements. "Sir, the human vessels are broadcasting on all communication frequencies," Vex reported with confusion. "It appears to be some form of audio transmission, possibly music." The bridge crew listened as a strange human song called "Don't Stop Me Now" blared across every channel in space. Zixthor found it annoying and unprofessional, exactly what he expected from such a primitive species. He gave the order to advance, confident that this battle would end quickly. The Krellian armada moved through space like a metal wall of destruction, each ship maintaining perfect position in the battle formation. Fleetmaster Zixthor stood on his command deck, watching the human vessels grow larger on the display screens. The distance between the two fleets shrank rapidly as his ships accelerated toward engagement range. 2 million kilometers separated them now, and that gap would close within minutes. Admiral Morrison remained calm on the Washington's bridge, his eyes tracking every movement of the enemy fleet. "Distance to enemy contact," he asked. 2 million kilometers and closing fast, sir," Lieutenant Commander Greg Palmer reported from Tactical. "Energy signatures are spiking across their entire line. They're charging their main weapons now." Dr. Helen Wright studied her science console with intense focus. "Those look like plasma cannons and particle beam arrays," she said. "Standard Council weapons designed to overwhelm shields with concentrated energy bursts." Jack nodded slowly, his mind already 3 steps ahead of the current situation. "Captain Hayes, signal the fleet," he ordered. "Activate defensive screen alpha on my mark." What happened next would change galactic warfare forever. The 40 human vessels suddenly began to break apart, each ship fragmenting into dozens of smaller autonomous craft. Where the Council expected to fight 40 targets, their sensors now showed 800 individual drones spreading across space. Each drone operated independently with its own power source and weapon systems. Zixthor watched his display in disbelief as the human fleet multiplied before his eyes. "What kind of trick is this?" he demanded. Vex frantically updated the tactical display, trying to track all the new targets. "Sir, each drone appears to be fully operational with complete weapons and propulsion capabilities. They're not decoys or sensor ghosts, they're all real threats." The drones didn't move in the neat formations that Council species used in battle. Instead, they scattered in patterns that seemed random and chaotic to alien eyes. The humans had programmed their ships to move like drunk people walking home, each step technically unpredictable, yet somehow reaching the intended destination. It was chaos theory transformed into a weapon, and the aliens had no defense against such tactics. The Krellian fleet opened fire with thousands of energy beams lancing through the darkness of space. Plasma bolts and particle beams filled the area where the human drones had been moments before. The alien targeting computers calculated trajectories based on standard tactical doctrine, predicting where enemies should move according to logical patterns. But the human drones were already somewhere else, having shifted position microseconds before the weapons fired. Lieutenant Jake Foster piloted one of the drone command nodes from inside the Washington, his hands dancing across the controls. "They're using predictive algorithms to target us," he called out with excitement in his voice. "Our random walk pattern is confusing their entire targeting grid." The aliens had fought wars for thousands of years, but they always fought opponents who moved in logical and predictable ways. Species that followed the same tactical doctrines taught in Council military academies. The humans had studied those same doctrines and specifically designed their movement patterns to exploit the weaknesses in such thinking. Zixthor's confidence began to crack as volley after volley missed their targets. "Adjust targeting protocols," he ordered. "Compensate for their erratic movements." Vex worked frantically at his console. "Sir, our computers can't establish a reliable firing solution when the targets refuse to follow standard evasion patterns." The council delegates watched through their long-range sensors, confusion replacing their earlier confidence. "How are they avoiding our weapons?" one delegate asked. "Our technology is far superior to theirs." Quillick studied the data feeds with growing concern. "They're not using superior technology," he realized. "They're using unpredictability as a weapon. Our targeting systems are designed to fight rational opponents." Jack Morrison watched the alien fleet waste ammunition on empty space. "They're adapting their targeting now," he observed. "Time to show them our next trick. Commander Hayes, activate swarm protocol." Lisa's fingers flew across her command console. "Activating swarm protocol now, sir," she confirmed. "Let's teach them about how bees defend their hive." The human drones suddenly shifted from chaotic evasion to coordinated attack patterns. They moved like a single living organism, flowing through space with purpose and deadly intent. The aliens had mocked humanity's kinetic weapons as primitive, but those weapons proved devastatingly effective in ways energy beams could never match. Each drone opened fire with railgun systems that launched tungsten rods at tremendous velocities. The projectiles weren't simple bullets, though. Each round contained micro-thrusters and basic guidance computers. They could make small course corrections even after leaving the barrel, adjusting their trajectory to hit moving targets. The alien point defense systems were designed to intercept missiles and torpedoes, large, slow-moving objects that were easy to track. They couldn't handle thousands of small, smart projectiles coming from every direction at once. The tungsten rods punched through energy shields that were optimized for stopping plasma and lasers. They tore through armor plating designed to dissipate heat rather than absorb kinetic impacts. Zixthor watched in horror as his beautiful formation began taking damage. Ships that had survived dozens of battles against Council enemies now found their defenses useless against human weapons. "Evasive maneuvers," he screamed at his crew, but his massive warships were built for intimidation and firepower, not agility or speed. They couldn't dodge fast enough to avoid the swarm of guided projectiles. The human drones didn't just attack randomly. They coordinated every move through a shared network. Drones on the flanks pushed enemy ships toward kill zones in the center. Others deployed electronic countermeasures that jammed alien sensors and communications. A third group actively hacked into Krellian computer systems, spreading confusion and false orders throughout the enemy fleet. Commander Sarah Bennett led the Electronic Warfare Division with skill and creativity. "Boss, I've convinced 3 of their cruisers that the flagship has been compromised by enemy infiltrators," she reported with barely contained laughter. "They're requesting permission to open fire on the Eternal Dominion." Jack allowed himself a slight smile. "Denied," he said. "We want them confused, not doing our job for us." The battle had been going for only 4 minutes, but the alien formation was already collapsing. Ships collided while trying to evade the drone swarms. Captains stopped following orders from the flagship as communication networks degraded. The proud Krellian armada descended into chaos while the human swarm flowed through them like water. Jake Foster flew his command node directly through the enemy formation, his linked drones dancing around plasma bursts. "You know what we learned from video games," he transmitted to his squadron. "The bigger the enemy, the slower they turn. Circle strafe tactics, people. Just like fighting the boss in level 10. 5 minutes into the battle, and the situation had reversed completely from Council predictions. The galactic delegates sat in stunned silence watching their overwhelming fleet struggle against a force they had considered primitive. Ships that should have crushed human resistance were instead burning in space, their crews frantically trying to contain damage and restore systems. Zixthor gripped his command console as another impact shook the Eternal Dominion. "Status report," he demanded through clenched teeth. Vex's voice trembled as he read the damage assessments. "Forward shields down to 30% capacity. Hull breaches reported on decks 9 through 15. We've lost contact with 47 vessels, and another 112 are reporting critical damage to major systems." The fleetmaster couldn't believe what he was hearing. His 300-ship armada was being torn apart by vessels that shouldn't have posed any real threat. "Impossible," he muttered. "We've barely managed to hit any of their craft." But the tactical display confirmed the terrible truth. The human swarm had evolved beyond simple evasion into a perfectly coordinated killing machine. Groups of drones would converge on a single alien ship from multiple angles, overwhelming its defenses with concentrated firepower. Once that target was disabled or destroyed, the drones would scatter before reinforcements could arrive, then reform to attack another vulnerable ship. It was the same tactic wolves used to hunt prey much larger than themselves, translated into three-dimensional space combat. Admiral Morrison watched the battle unfold exactly as his planners had predicted. "Captain Hayes, ammunition status?" he asked calmly. Lisa checked her tactical readout. "At current expenditure rate, we have 37 minutes of sustained fire remaining, but based on enemy fleet degradation, we won't need half that time. Their formation is completely broken now." Jack nodded in satisfaction. "This is why we train for chaos while they train for order. Every human war, every conflict throughout our history taught us that no plan survives contact with the enemy. You have to adapt or die. On Earth, billions of people watched live feeds from the battle. In homes and bars and public squares, people who had been terrified 12 hours ago now cheered as their fleet dismantled a force 5 times larger." Lieutenant Greg Palmer highlighted a section of the tactical display. "Admiral, their command ship is attempting to regroup surviving forces around its position. They're forming a defensive sphere, classic last stand formation." Dr. Wright analyzed the alien movements. "They'll concentrate their point defense systems and create overlapping fields of fire. It's actually a solid defensive strategy if they can maintain formation discipline." Jack Morrison smiled at his science officer. "Remember that trick we learned from studying quantum mechanics?" he asked. "The one about particles being in 2 places at once." Lisa's eyes lit up with understanding. "I'll prepare the quantum drones immediately, sir." What the aliens witnessed next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. A wave of human drones approached the defensive sphere, and alien gunners opened fire with everything they had. Point defense systems filled space with energy beams, and the approaching drones exploded by the dozens. Zixthor felt a surge of hope watching the destruction. "Finally," he said, "maintain fire, don't let them get close." But then every sensor on every ship in the defensive formation went completely insane. The drones they had just destroyed suddenly appeared inside the sphere, weapons hot and firing at point-blank range. "What kind of sorcery is this?" Zixthor roared in disbelief. The answer was beautifully simple in execution. The drones that had approached the sphere were decoys, hollow shells packed with sensors and transmitters broadcasting fake energy signatures. The real attack drones had been positioned inside the defensive sphere for the past 3 minutes, powered down and drifting like debris. They were indistinguishable from the wreckage of previous exchanges until they activated simultaneously. Jake Foster had personally piloted several of the stealth drones into position. "Trojan horse, ladies and gentlemen," he transmitted on the command channel. It worked for the ancient Greeks, and it works just fine in space. The drones fired at point-blank range into the tightly packed alien vessels. At such close distances, shields provided no protection. Armor couldn't absorb the impacts, and there was no room to maneuver away from the attacks. Ships that had clustered together for mutual protection became easy targets trapped in a killing zone. The Eternal Dominion shuddered violently as railgun rounds pierced through multiple decks and struck the main reactor core. Emergency systems activated automatically, but Zixthor knew his flagship was dying. "Abandon ship," he ordered. "All hands to escape pods immediately." In the council chamber, Ambassador Vorn found her voice. "Recall the fleet," she said desperately. "Signal full surrender before every ship is destroyed." Quillix worked his controls, trying to establish communication with the surviving vessels. 7 minutes, he said in shock. 7 minutes and our fleet is effectively destroyed. Commander Sarah Bennett intercepted the alien surrender signals and looked up at Admiral Morrison. "Sir, they're attempting to broadcast surrender on multiple frequencies." Jack considered the situation carefully. Every instinct told him to press the advantage, to eliminate the threat completely and ensure these aliens never threatened humanity again. But he also knew that mercy could be more powerful than vengeance. "Cease fire," he ordered. "Broadcast on all channels that we accept their surrender. Any vessel that powers down weapons and shields immediately will not be targeted." Lisa looked at her commander with a question in her eyes. "They would have annihilated us without hesitation, sir." "I know," Jack replied quietly. "But we're not them, and now the entire galaxy will know that too." The human drones stopped firing and took up defensive positions around the crippled alien fleet. Medical ships began moving toward the most heavily damaged vessels, ready to provide assistance. The battle that the Galactic Council predicted would take hours had ended in less than 8 minutes. Humanity had won not through superior technology but through superior thinking. They had studied every form of warfare in human history, and every example of coordination in nature. They had taken lessons from video games and sports, from wolf packs and bee swarms, from ancient tactics and modern innovations. Most importantly, they had prepared to fight an enemy that thought in rigid patterns while humans embraced chaos and adaptation. The Eternal Dominion's escape pods launched into space, carrying Zixthor and his surviving crew to safety. The proud fleetmaster watched his burning flagship through a viewport, struggling to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. His last thought before the command pod carried him away was simple but profound. Humans don't fight like anyone else in the galaxy. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council chamber held an emergency session. The confident delegates who had gathered to watch humanity's defeat now sat in subdued silence. The military analyst Quillix floated at the center, tasked with explaining the impossible to species that had dominated space warfare for millennia. They didn't fight according to any doctrine we recognize, Quillix reported in his echoing voice. Their tactics constantly adapted and evolved during combat. What appeared chaotic was actually precisely calculated unpredictability. Admiral Morrison and Captain Hayes appeared before the Council via hologram, representing humanity in the formal first contact proceedings. Behind them in Earth orbit, the surviving alien warships sat under human protection. The humans had sent repair crews and medical teams to help damaged vessels, treating former enemies as honored guests rather than prisoners. You were correct about one aspect of human nature, Jack addressed the assembled aliens. We are emotional beings, but we're also endlessly creative and adaptable. While you spent thousands of years perfecting one way of warfare, we studied 10,000 different approaches. Council Speaker Thorne, a massive crystalline being, spoke with careful diplomacy. Admiral Morrison, the Council acknowledges our severe miscalculation regarding human capabilities. We wish to establish proper diplomatic relations and understand how your inferior technology defeated our superior forces. Captain Lisa Hayes stepped forward in the hologram. That's exactly the problem with your thinking, she said. You saw primitive weapons and assumed weakness. We saw options and possibilities. Your plasma cannons are powerful, but they only work in straight lines. Our railguns are simple, but we can fire thousands of rounds per second, and each projectile thinks for itself. You built battleships to intimidate. We built a network to adapt. Dr. Helen Wright joined the hologram holding a small device. This is a smartphone from Earth, 30 years old and obsolete by our current standards, she explained. It has more processing power than some of your cruiser combat systems. We didn't need to make superweapons, we just needed to make our weapons smart enough to work together. Lieutenant Greg Palmer added his perspective. Every video game our children play teaches coordination and adaptation. Every sports team shows the power of individuals working toward a common goal. Every ant colony on Earth demonstrates how simple units can achieve complex objectives through cooperation. We didn't invent swarm intelligence, we just applied natural principles to warfare. The revelation settled heavily over the Council members. They had been fighting the same way for so long that innovation had become foreign to them. Their military doctrines were thousands of years old, refined and perfected, but ultimately stagnant. Humanity had only been in space for 2 centuries and treated every engagement as an opportunity to try something new. Fleetmaster Zixthor stood before the Council facing judgment for his defeat. His 4 eyes found Admiral Morrison's hologram. My crew expected execution after surrender, he said. Instead, we received medical treatment, hot meals, and respectful handling. Why did you show mercy to an enemy that intended your complete destruction? Jack Morrison took a moment before answering. Because we remember being the underdog in every conflict. We remember being underestimated and written off as inferior. We also remember that today's enemy can become tomorrow's ally, if both sides are wise enough to recognize the opportunity. Sarah Bennett monitored intercepted alien communications and smiled at what she discovered. Admiral, I'm picking up diplomatic requests from 47 different species asking for formal relations with Earth. They're not acting out of fear, sir. The messages express genuine curiosity and respect. Jake Foster reviewed battle recordings for the official military report when something struck him. You know what really won this fight? He said to his squadron during a debriefing. It wasn't our technology because the Council has member species that could match our innovation if they tried. It was the fact that we've never stopped being scrappy and creative. That insight captured the truth perfectly. Humanity entered the galactic stage recently after spending millennia fighting itself. Every war, every competition, Every conflict on Earth had been against opponents just as clever and adaptable as humans themselves. That constant struggle forced humanity to innovate constantly or face defeat. The Galactic Council had dominated space for so long they forgot what real competition felt like. Ambassador Vorn spoke for many when she asked the question everyone wondered. What happens now? Morrison's expression softened. Now we talk and learn from each other. You have thousands of years of knowledge about space and alien species. We have fresh perspectives on problem-solving and tactical thinking. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us and too full of wonders to waste time on warfare. The Council agreed to new terms that day. Humanity would keep all its colonies and gain full Council membership with voting rights. A joint military academy would be established where human tactics could be studied and integrated with alien technology. Species that had fought each other for centuries watched with interest as a newcomer species brought new ideas to ancient problems. As the hologram faded and the Washington prepared to return to Mars, Lisa turned to Jack. Do you think they'll actually change their thinking? Some will adapt and thrive, Jack replied while watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. The smart ones will learn from this experience. The rest will keep underestimating species like us, small and stubborn enough to refuse accepting defeat. That's fine, Lisa said with a grin. We never read the script they expected us to follow anyway. In Council archives, the battle received official designation as the 8-Minute War. Military academies across hundreds of worlds would study every second of the engagement. The official report filed by Quillix and distributed galaxy-wide carried a simple title that said everything needed. Alien Council predicted human defeat in hours, the battle ended in minutes. A human military historian added a subtitle that captured the deeper meaning. They expected a war, we brought evolution. The months following the 8-Minute War transformed galactic politics in ways no one anticipated. Species that had accepted Council dominance for thousands of years suddenly questioned old assumptions about power and technology. The humans had proven that innovation mattered more than raw strength, that adaptation beat perfection, and that fresh thinking could overcome ancient experience. Admiral Jack Morrison found himself in an unexpected role as humanity's chief ambassador to the Galactic Council. He traveled between Earth and the Council headquarters on the crystalline world of Thora Prime, negotiating treaties and building relationships. The aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive now sought human advice on everything from military tactics to computer systems. Captain Lisa Hayes took command of the new Joint Military Academy established in orbit around Mars. Students from 30 different species attended, classes where human instructors taught concepts that seemed obvious to Earth, minds but revolutionary to aliens. The idea that chaos could be weaponized, that unpredictability was a valid strategy, that studying nature provided tactical advantages, these concepts challenged everything the Council had believed about warfare. Lieutenant Commander Greg Palmer led a team designing the next generation of human spacecraft. The new ships incorporated alien technology for shields and power generation, while maintaining human innovations in weapon systems and tactical coordination. The result was a hybrid design that impressed even the most skeptical Council engineers. Dr. Helen Wright established a research partnership with Quillix, the military analyst who had predicted human defeat so confidently. Together they studied how different species approached problem-solving, and why humanity's methods proved so effective against traditional Council tactics. Their research revealed fascinating insights into how cultures shaped military thinking. Commander Sarah Bennett trained alien communications officers in electronic warfare techniques. Many Council species had never considered hacking enemy systems during battle, viewing such tactics as dishonorable. Sarah patiently explained that honor was meaningless if your people died because you refused to use available advantages. Some alien officers struggled with the concept while others embraced it enthusiastically. Lieutenant Jake Foster became an instructor pilot, teaching alien students how to think like swarm units rather than individual ships. The hardest lesson involved getting species that prized individual glory to work as coordinated teams. Foster used video games and sports analogies that meant nothing to aliens at first, but gradually the concepts took hold. Fleetmaster Zixthor surprised everyone by requesting assignment to the Academy as a student. The proud Krellian warrior who had led the invasion fleet now studied human tactics with humble dedication. He understood that his defeat came from rigid thinking, and he was determined to learn flexibility. His presence inspired other senior Council officers to attend the Academy, despite the initial embarrassment of learning from those they had considered inferior. Ambassador Vorn became one of humanity's strongest supporters on the Council. Her species, the Sisterhood of Tal, possessed natural abilities and emotional perception that made them excellent diplomats. She recognized that human emotional volatility, which she had identified as weakness, was actually a source of strength. Humans felt deeply, and that passion drove their creativity and determination. The Council also learned unsettling truths about their own complacency. Investigation revealed that many member species had proposed innovative tactical concepts over the centuries, but the military establishment had rejected them as too radical or untested. The bureaucracy had become so ossified that new ideas couldn't penetrate layers of tradition and established doctrine. Humanity's success came partly because they had no such traditions limiting their thinking. 6 months after the battle, the Council faced its first major test of the new alliance. A hostile force from beyond known space began raiding outer colonies. The invaders used hit-and-run tactics that frustrated traditional Council response strategies. Jack Morrison proposed a joint human and alien task force to deal with the threat. The mission would use human tactical flexibility combined with alien technological advantages. Council Speaker Thorne approved the plan, and for the first time human ships flew alongside former enemies against a common threat. The task force commander was Admiral Chen from the Beijing, working with Vice Admiral Zixthor commanding Krellian forces. The partnership was awkward at first as both sides learned to coordinate their very different approaches to warfare. But gradually they discovered that combining human unpredictability with alien firepower created a devastating combination. The raiders had never encountered such varied tactics. When they adapted to human swarm patterns, the Krellian battleships would hammer them with overwhelming force. When they concentrated defenses against alien weapons, human drones would slip through gaps and strike vulnerable systems. The campaign lasted 3 months and ended with the raiders suing for peace and requesting to join the Council. Back on Earth, people debated what humanity's place in the galaxy should be. Some argued for isolation, maintaining independence from alien politics. Others pushed for deeper integration, believing humanity had much to learn from species with thousands of years of spacefaring experience. Jack Morrison addressed the United Nations General Assembly to share his perspective. "We've proven we can fight and win against superior numbers," he said, "but our real strength isn't military power. It's our ability to learn and adapt. Every alien species we meet knows things we don't. Every culture has insights we lack. If we isolate ourselves, we stop growing and become as stagnant as the Council was before we arrived." The debate continued, but gradually Earth moved toward greater cooperation with alien species. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges established, and joint research projects launched. Human scientists worked with alien colleagues on everything from medicine to faster-than-light travel. The younger generation grew up knowing aliens as partners rather than threats. Lisa Hayes watched her students graduate from the academy, a diverse mix of humans and aliens who had learned to think in new ways. Some would return to their home fleets to teach others. Some would join the joint task forces patrolling Council space. All of them carried forward the lessons that had won the 8-Minute War. Adapt constantly, learn from everything, and never assume the old ways are the only ways. Dr. Wright and Quillix published their research in a document that became required reading at every military academy in Council space. The core conclusion was simple but profound. Humanity succeeded because they were newcomers without preconceptions about how things should be done. Every species reached a point where tradition became a cage-limiting innovation. The solution was to constantly seek fresh perspectives and question established methods. Jake Foster retired from active duty to write a book about his experiences. He called it Fighting Like Humans, and it became a bestseller across dozens of worlds. Alien readers found the concept fascinating, that a species could treat warfare as just another problem to solve creatively, rather than a formal ritual with established rules. The book's popularity sparked a broader interest in human culture and history. Zixthor eventually earned his degree from the Academy and returned to the Krellian fleet with new rank and responsibilities. He worked to reform Krellian military doctrine, incorporating human tactical concepts while maintaining the honor and discipline his species valued. It was a difficult balance, but Zixthor proved that tradition and innovation could coexist. 10 years after the 8-Minute War, a memorial was dedicated in Earth orbit. It honored all who died during the battle, including the thousands of alien crew members who had followed orders to attack humanity. The memorial's inscription carried a message approved by both human and council representatives. They came as enemies but taught us the danger of arrogance. We fought as underdogs but learned the responsibility of victory. May we never forget that yesterday's opponent can become tomorrow's friend. Admiral Morrison attended the ceremony along with Ambassador Vorn, Fleet Master Zixthor, and hundreds of others. As the memorial was unveiled, showing intertwined human and alien figures reaching toward the stars together, Jack reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was bigger than any one species, more complex than any single perspective could capture. Humanity had won a battle, but more importantly, they had helped start a conversation about how all species could move forward together. The 8-minute war became a turning point, not because humanity dominated the galaxy, but because they showed everyone that the future belonged to those willing to adapt and learn.